Hey guys, what's going on? Bahroo here, and today I wanted to go over something that has been highly requested in my live stream, and that is a download link for my Gunzerker, as well as explaining my build and gear setup, because I do a lot of overpower 8 rating on my Gunzerker, and I also get a lot of requests asking, what is this gear? Why do you spec this way? Oh my god, what's your build? What are you doing? Oh my god. So this video is for that. It'll explain pretty much everything. So first, let's go ahead and build our Gunzerker. So obviously the first thing we're going to pick up is Gunzerker itself. Allows you to hold 2 guns. Now for the first part we'll go ahead and go down the rampage tree. So for the first thing we want in rampage is obviously inconceivable. The reason we want this is because it will allow you to get your gun sort of stuck on the money shot, because how this works is as you empty your magazine you have a chance to have inconceivable proc on your money shot. Now this will only work when you're gunzerking, but it will give you the massive damage increase that you have seen in my rating videos. Anyway, the next thing that we want to get is the last longer. The reason for this is that way we can keep our Gunzerk up in addition with having get some. You will need to spec into Yippee as well, because you will need a few kills. If you're using Chaotic Evil Monk, you will not be able to refresh your Gunzerk 100% of the time. However, if you're using any sort of last longer comm, you will be able to. So now let's go ahead and go over the next part. Now, I really don't ever see it necessary to spec into I'm ready already, because I do a lot of comm swapping, and that if my Gunzerk isn't up when I need to switch, I'll just switch to the Gunzerker comm, and this skill is basically useless. I also don't spec into Steady as She Goes, because when you use that with an interfacer, it will reset your interfacer, making it inaccurate as fuck. And then finally there's 5 shots or 6, which just makes it harder to get to your money shot, which you don't want. So the next thing you want to put points into is just 5 points into all of the reflexes. This will increase your reload speed, thus increasing your DPS. So for the next thing we want double your fun, because when throwing slag nades at Terra you want as much slag going out as possible. Then putting the remainder 4 points into Yippee, because as we said, these 3 skills are useless. Next we want to put 5 points in Get Some. This will allow you to do 2 things. One, it will recharge your Gunzerk while you're Gunzerking, and second, it will get you Keep It Piping Hot. And then finally we're going to go ahead and pick up Keep Firing for a DPS increase. So next thing we want to do is go down the Gunlust tree. Gunlust tree can be optimized slightly depending on what you want to do. However, this build that I'm giving you guys is more for everything. So go ahead and put 5 points into Locked and Loaded. And let's go ahead and go over the other points here. Now, Locked and Loaded is obviously just a small DPS increase that's just sort of added on when you reload. But Quick Draw is nice, and if I'm going to fight a boss that I know I'm going to use interfacers for, such as Terramorphous, I will spec into this. It is nice to have. However, if you're using a Herald, it's much better to put the points into I'm Your Huckleberry. So since the Herald is typically used a lot more, we're going to go ahead and put points into that, giving you a damage increase as well as reducing the time between reloads, which helps your DPS. Next, obviously, we're going to want Money Shot for the damage increase. Also remember, as I've said before in previous videos, the minimum magazine size for a full bonus is 12, not 10. So keep that in mind. So now let's go ahead and go over the skills that we've unlocked here. All I need is one is completely useless. Never use this, ever. It's just a pile of shit. Next we have the auto loader, which really doesn't do all that much in any way. Typically you want to use a Herald and a Grog Nozzle, thus whatever you don't have equipped, not really that important. Plus it doesn't take that long to reload most of the guns anyway, because of all of the reloading skills that Salvador has. Next, you want to go into down, not out. So that way, if you get downed, which against certain bosses like Veracitous, this will happen very often, but you'll be able to easily get back up and not lose your Gunzerk, because if there's anything that's the worst with fighting Veracitous, it's Gunzerking, immediately going down, getting a second wind, and then being fucked for about 40 seconds. So anyway, next is Divergent Likeness. This is where I'm saying about the optimization. Now, if you're using a Herald and a Grog Nozzle, obviously they are both pistols, and you want to spec into this. However, if you're using a Interfacer and a Grog Nozzle, all you'll get is accuracy increase, and this does nothing for an Interfacer, which is already extremely accurate. So, for the sake of this video, we're going to go ahead and put 4 points into Divergent Likeness, and we're going to leave Lay Waste alone because this is for Heralds. The next thing we're going to go ahead and put points into is Keep It Piping Hot. This is very good for the Herald as well as the Interfacer. Let's go ahead and go over why. When you proc Get Some, you will also activate Keep It Piping Hot, because while Get Some is active, you are considered cooling down, and thus you will get a damage increase. Why is this so important for Herald though? Gun damage will increase your Herald's damage at a flat rate. After that, Splash from the Herald is boosted by grenade damage, giving you an additional damage increase for your Herald. So that's why you want to pick that up. Next we have No Kill Like Overkill. Very easy. I mean, there's pretty straightforward as to why you want to spec into that. Any sort of overkill damage is going to be applied to all of your other shots, increasing your damage. So now let's go ahead and go over the Brawn Tree. Next we have Insight. This is going to increase your reload speed as well as your movement speed. This is very good for keeping up with Veracitous and getting your reloads in before the melees go through. And that's why you want to spec into that. Next we have Hard to Kill. We're not specing into this because increasing your maximum health is kind of redundant, since most enemies will chew through it very quickly, and all raid bosses will health gate on any hit. Next we have I'm the Juggernaut. Damage reduction is very mediocre in this game, and it's only 20%, and it's a kill skill. So all of those things, it has nothing going for it. So we're going to go ahead and ignore that altogether. And I mean, just to give you an idea of how pointless it is, Come At Me Bro gives you a 400% damage reduction, and Veracitous will still two-shot you. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and spec into Asbestos for the damage or dot reduction. It also reduces the slag reduction, which is very huge since there is no protection against that via shield. Next we're going to go into Uppercut. Now this, all jokes aside, this is actually a very good skill. This will allow you to punch key away or into acid pools. This will allow you to punch a suicide midget away from you that happened to get by. All sorts of different situational things, and it's overall very good to have. Now we have Ain't Got Time to Bleed. This skill is not that great because it suffers from the same thing as one of Maya's regeneration skills, in that it only works when you're low on health. And its rate of healing is also very low. You're not going to get above health gate with this skill, so don't bother with it. So now we're going to go ahead and put 3 points into Out of Bubblegum. Now it's up to you if you want to put this last point into Divergent Likeness, Yippee-Ki-Yay, or Out of Bubblegum. It's really up to you. If you want a little bit of a fire rate, go into Out of Bubblegum. If you're having trouble keeping your Gunzerk up, go into Yippee-Ki-Yay. And if you want a little bit of extra damage, go into Divergent Likeness. DPS wise, Divergent Likeness is the best, so that's what I will be putting this point into. So this is the spec that I use on my Salvador and in all of my streams. So now that we finished that, let's go ahead and go over the gear. So for shields, we have the Sham, the Bee, and the Rough Rider. The Rough Rider is what I use for pretty much every single boss, because when your health is lowered, the Rough Rider counts as if you don't have a shield, sort of. even though it says 0 capacity, it still counts as a fully drained shield, so you have a base 25% chance to proc your inconceivable, and that's why we use it. Next we have the Sham. I typically use this when running through the beatdown or other areas with lots of projectiles. It's also really good for the Peak, which has a lot of things which can potentially shoot you before your projectiles can reach them. And then we have the Bee. The reason we have 2 different elements of Bee. The Alkaline Bee I use when I fight Master Gi because the worms will put an acid dot on you. Note that this will not actually protect you from the acid pools that you absorb, rather the dot that the worms can put on you themselves. And then we have the Inflammable Bee, which I use for the dragon fight, and this prevents me from getting ignited by Incinerator, and don't really have to worry about dots at that point since the shock dot lasts for 2 seconds and the corrosion dot is, well, Brood's dead in the first 5 seconds anyway, so that's kind of irrelevant. For most bosses though, you're going to want to use a Rough Rider. Another benefit of the Sham is when using the Norfleet to take out Hyperion's minions, and yeah. So now let's go ahead and go over the grenades that I use. The grenades that I use are a Crossfire, a Quasar, and a Jumpin' Biddy. There's reasons for these 3 grenades. The Crossfire is obviously for slagging, but it happens to also throw out a grenade, and this grenade can break your Bee. Now, I typically don't use the Bee unless doing something very specific with Salvador, and I'll typically always use a Rough Rider, but if you do use a Bee, you want to swap your Crossfire with a Bandit. This will allow you to get close to the enemy without having to worry about the grenades taking down your Bee. And then finally we have the Quasar. Quasar is very good for long distance healing. If you have an enemy that's very far away that's hitting you, say a sniper, and you want to get some healing and stun them, you can throw a Quasar at their general location and pull a Tesla to them, and you'll get a lot of healing as well as stunning them and allowing you to close the distance to them. So that's what we're using for our grenades. Now let's go ahead and go over the relics. Now I have a Blood of the Ancients relic in here. I really never use this unless I'm stacking health pools or acid pools for the Master Gi one-shot. Outside of that, this relic is kind of useless, so I don't recommend using it at all. The Fire, Shock, and Corrosion relics are typically just for whatever you feel like using. So, you know, if you're using a Shock interfacer, use Shock Relic, etc. And the Sheriff's Badge is obviously the go-to item for the Herald. I also do have an Explosive Relic, although it's typically not used, as the Sheriff's Badge does give a higher damage per second, but if you want more damage per hit, you can go the Explosive damage if you're having troubles with ammo. So that way you'll do more damage per ammo that you expend. And now let's go ahead and go over the comms. So the 2 comms that I use that I swap between are Chaotic Evil Monk and Legendary Gunzerker. When you run Chaotic Evil Monk, you will not be able to maintain Gunzerk 100% of the time unless you can get, I believe it is 3 kills with your Yippee-Ki-Yay. So if you're fighting certain bosses like Veracitus and you may run out of and we're running out of your Gunzerk, he can kill you very quickly, you're going to want to put on a Gunzerker comm. If you're in multiplayer, I highly recommend you only run Gunzerker comm, because you won't have time to switch between the 2, and if Veracitus is focusing you, he can very easily down you. So that's typically why I use Gunzerker in multiplayer and not Chaotic Evil Monk, because Salvador already has massive damage. Adding a little bit more really won't do that much, whereas I could just make myself nearly immortal by never running out of Gunzerk. I also have 2 other comms here that I typically don't use, which is the Hoarder comm. This is mostly just, we use this in the Peak if we happen to run the Supreme Vault Hunter mode filter on it and my teammates want some ammo. Outside of that, I never use this comm as a solo Salvador. You will never run out of ammo for anything outside of maybe an Iron God. And then finally we have a Berserker comm. Really, I only use this for just moving around if I want to get to an area faster. Outside of that, this combo is really lackluster in terms of its bonuses, so again, I don't recommend using this over, say, a legendary Gunzerker comp. So that's the equipment that I use. Now let's go ahead and go over the gear. We have obviously the interfacer in shock, fire, and corrosive variants. Obviously you want to use that for the different bosses. The boss that you use it on, though, kind of depends on what gear you want to use, because I also have a herald. For Terramorphous, I'll typically use a fire interfacer, combine that with a Lady Fist and a Grog Nozzle, switching between the two as needed for either damage or healing. Because Terramorphous crit spots are so easy to hit. That and Terramorphous himself resists, well, he doesn't really resist, but splash damage in general does less damage to him than direct damage. So the Herald is already weak on that front. For the next boss, Hyperius, I'll typically use a Herald with a Norfleet as a backup for taking out the bots. Yeah, so this is pretty much the gear setup that I will use for Hyperius. I'll run the Unkempt Herald and Grog Nozzle combo, start off the fight. As soon as he does that, round up the minions and then switch to the Norfleet and hit them all. If you're having trouble with ammo, you can also go to the Sham, or you can just rely on Inconceivable. But the reason I use the Herald on Hyperius as opposed to the Interfacer is because Hyperius' crit spot is extremely small and is very hard to hit. Assuming you can actually crit the boss relatively easily, the Interfacer does more DPS than the Herald. However, if you're having trouble with that, then you want to use the Herald. So that's why I always use such an Interfacer on dragons, even though, you know, maybe the Herald's better for taking them down. But anyway, let's go over some more of the weapons that I use. I have the Logan's gun in case you want to regenerate rocket ammo if you want to save money, because rocket ammo costs a shit ton. I also have a bitch that I use in conjunction with the Lady Fist and the Bee for Dexy, because that's probably the best way to take him out, is to just use the bitch and Lady Fist combo. This will allow you to kill his crit spot in about 2 hits, and it's a lot better than just randomly spraying at him with a Herald and hoping that it hits. Next, obviously, the Grog Nozzle for healing, slag, and drunk effects. Then we also have the Trespasser. Use this on the Trespassing the Chief for bypassing his shield, so that way you can remove Veracitus' shield without having to worry too much. And that'll pretty much cover all of the gear and spec that I use on my Salvador. I also have my bar, which you can see I have been playing this game for a while now, so this is the amount of bar that I've gotten from just speedrunning, playing the game, etc, etc. So anyway guys, I hope that this clears up everything that I use on my Salvador. In the description below you'll be able to find a download link for this character. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. As always, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you found this helpful, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.